Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sophie Egan with the Culinary Institute of America. I'm here with Dara Silverstein. We're actually side by side for a change here at Stanford. And we are delighted to welcome you all to our first webinar of 2018 that is in our Lunch and Learn / Latte and Learn series. We host these at 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, hence the lunch or latte, depending on your time zone. But we hope you have one or both of those on hand and are settling in for what will be a very educational hour. With these webinars, each webinar focuses on one of the 24 menus of change principles, and it's really a chance to hear from a subject matter expert as well as from one of your very own MCRC members who's really a leader in this particular principle. So we are extremely fortunate to have Richard Young and Paul Houle be giving today's webinar. And before that, I just wanted to mention a bit about why we chose this webinar, or why we chose this principle, and why we're really excited. So of course, menus of change is all about menus, right? But as we know from principle number 10, food and menu design are not the only ways to advance sustainability or health, for that matter, in food service. So the principle today that is the focus is design health sustainability into operations and dining spaces. And it really is in recognition of often realizing that with all these principles, and of course, we focus on flavor and we focus on ingredients, but there's huge opportunity. So we wouldn't want this to be the forgotten principle. And there's a lot of great strategies that are out there that can be implemented across MCRC institutions or institutions that are part of MCRC. And just a reminder that whether it's the kitchen design that can support optimal preparation of fresh, healthy foods, or the selection of equipment and building materials that are environmentally friendly, that are energy and water efficient, it might even have to do with food choice architecture and the design of spaces that, the physical architecture that can lead consumers toward healthier, more sustainable choices. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And I'll briefly introduce our two speakers and then turn it over to them. So first up, we're going to have Richard Young, who some of you may know. He's quite an active public speaker. He's the Director of Education at the Food Service Technology Center. I had the pleasure of seeing him speak in person at that center, which is located in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he'll tell you more about that, but really he focuses on translating years of food service research into practical information. You'll see he's a very skilled communicator and distiller of ideas into action. So also worth mentioning that he is the author and creator of the online food service energy efficiency expert training and certification program. I'm sure he can tell you more about that. And he also has been a member of a number of groups, but namely the National Restaurant Association's Conserve Advisory Council. He's also a past fellow of the Hobart Center for Food Service Sustainability. So needless to say, he is truly an expert in this arena, and we're very fortunate that he's taking the time to join us. After Richard, we will hear from Paul Houle, whom many of you, of course, know. He is co-chair of the Dining Directors Committee in MCRC, but in his day job, he's the Director of Campus Dining Services at University of Colorado Boulder. I also had the pleasure of visiting Paul's operation and seeing in person some of the really remarkable and cutting-edge innovations that he's going to share with you today. He's been with the university for over 15 years, had a lot of different positions. He was really instrumental in CU Boulder's brand new Village Center Dining and Community Commons, which has won a number of awards. $49 million dining center, and he'll tell you a lot about that, but wanted to just briefly give him some kudos for among the awards was that CU Boulder actually got the top honor in food service technology. So in this fall, CU Boulder was named Tech Accelerator of the Year by Restaurant Business, a huge, huge honor, winning out over a number of actual restaurant operations for just the array of cutting edge techniques that were incorporated. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Richard, and Richard will walk you through and then turn it over to Paul.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And let's just pull up my slides here. And come on, there we go. And I just have to say, It's a real honor to be here with you guys today. So we'll have a little fun, talk about sustainability beyond the plate. That is my subject today, and how our piece of the world, the equipment side, actually supports what you guys do in menu sustainability. First off, I just want to give you a really quick notion of who we are. I actually work for Frontier Energy consulting firm, but most of you guys have known us for years and years as Fishnick, or Fisher Nickel Inc., but you can always find us at fishnick.com. That's our website. And we have partnered all these years, for 30 years, with Pacific Gas and Electric Company to operate the Food Service Technology Center, which is in Northern California. And like I say, 30 years at it, and I've been here 29 years. So I can probably answer your questions or make up a good answer. And let me just give you an idea of the four primary things that the Food Service Technology Center does. First off, we have an appliance test lab where we roll appliances in, test them to very rigorous standards, and come up with lab data. We also do a lot of field research because things happen in the field that don't happen in the labs. Humans are always interesting. We get a tremendous amount of real-world experience in the field. We do a lot of direct customer support where we do consultations, walkthrough of buildings, and then a tremendous amount of workforce education and training. And of course, that's what's near and dear to my heart because I love sharing this information and our 30 years of learning with everybody. So let's start off with a big question now. If I was teaching one of your college culinary classes, the first question I'd ask everybody is, why do kitchens need to be sustainable? And I'd make them all guess for a little bit and give me a bunch of answers. But since we're on a webinar today, I'm just going to cut right to the chase, okay? When you run kitchens, you generate carbon and you consume water, okay? So we need to keep that in mind. And here's what that means. The act of cooking, holding, and refrigerating food impacts the environment. The very act of processing the food that you love so much actually impacts the environment, and all of the raw materials for the kitchen come from the environment. And I don't think that we think about that too much, right? That's one of those things I try to impart to everybody. It's a system. And so what that means is to support a healthy ecosystem, and in order to have, quality menus, to really have a fantastic food, we need a healthy ecosystem. You must embrace what we call sustainability beyond the plate. And typically what you guys are talking about in menus of change is sustainability on the plate. It's the locally grown, it's the organic, it's, healthy eating, all this kind of good stuff. And that's wonderful. And I think everybody is just doing fantastic at embracing sustainability on the plate. The sustainability beyond the plate, that's the back of house. That's not so sexy, it's but that's our world. But basically, you cannot really call yourself sustainable unless you go for both pieces of that. And I hope to give you some notion of that today as we step through these slides. I want to start off by showing you a slide. This is a zero net energy project that our lab has been working on. And as we start looking at the carbon footprint, and once again, the carbon, I'm going to talk primarily about carbon today, which is what impacts the environment. As we start looking at what impacts the environment, what's generating carbon, when we take out the lighting and the HVAC, we see that about 80% of the carbon generation comes from all of the cooking, refrigeration, and holding within the kitchen, right? So there's your big target. That's where you need to start looking. And then when I go to the cooking side, and I put in all my appliances and start thinking, okay, which one do I want to attack first? I find out that almost half of my carbon generation is split between, 4 appliances and my dish machine. So there's my bullseye. If I really want to try and move the needle, I need to start with my large appliances. So here's a big thought for you. To shrink your carbon footprint, you want to start by targeting your major cooking appliances. And let me tell you, all of your university kitchens are full of major, what I would consider, quote unquote, major cooking appliances, big pieces of equipment that are real energy guzzlers. Now you may be saying, Richard, that's great. I'd like to do this. How do I find this stuff? How do I get my procurement guys thinking about this, my consultants? The two easiest ways to find efficient equipment are to go look for Energy Star. We have a great program in California. It's called the California Energy Wise Rebate Program. Anybody can get to that information by going to fishnick.com, and you can essentially use either Energy Star or our California Energy Wise rebate list as your shopping list. So there was a time when you couldn't find any of this information. Now the stuff is really easy to find, and you'll see all your major appliances listed in these two areas. I also want to give you another little piece of information here. It's a great case study. We've worked with the California Energy Commission for about 3 years, and we went into a bunch of different facilities throughout California and replace the baseline gas cooking equipment with much more efficient gas cooking equipment. And we wanted to see how that worked and what hurdles we come up against. And so we've just published all this information at fishnick.com/CEC Cook. And the answers are pretty phenomenal. What I would suggest you start with is just start by reading some of the case studies. I think that'll give you a taste for how much energy there is to be saved out there. When you start looking at those major cooking appliances. And since we're talking universities, let's start with one. And I don't know if Dan is dialed in on the line today, but this is the UCSF Medical Center. And here's a case study that we did. I'd say go to that website, pull this one down, and look at it first. And when you look at it, there was an interesting line in there. We looked at the convection ovens, and here's why. Because you see the existing convection ovens use the most energy of any appliance on the line, consuming about 50% of the line's total energy. And I know all your kitchens are loaded up with convection ovens. So we basically changed out the old school, been making them the same way since the 1960s convection ovens, and we put in just very standard convection ovens, but they happen to be Energy Star. They were much more energy efficient. And, so no radical changes here. It's just basically upgrading equipment. And when we start looking at the savings, you can see, and we did two sets of double stack ovens. For the first set, we cut the energy use by 51%. And for the second, we cut the energy use by 56%. Now, that's really impactful because if you think about it, when you save a BTU of natural gas, that is a direct savings of carbon. When you start talking electricity, things can get complicated because some electricity is generated by wind and some electricity is generated by coal. So it gets really confusing. But natural gas basically comes from the wellhead to the end use without any conversion. So it's a really easy way to look at carbon savings. It's just one for one. And then if you're trying to make the business case, of course, we cut the bill by $3,000 a year. And then in California, there was $2,000 in rebates between those 4 ovens, right? So there's a great environmental case, and there's a great business case for looking at these very standard pieces of equipment and upgrading them to more efficient pieces of equipment, and none of it is rocket science. Now, I was curious. I wanted to know, how do those energy savings reflect on the carbon side? So I took the energy savings and I dropped them into some online cost calculators we have at fishnick.com. And once again, these are all free. Drop the numbers in there, and you can use these calculators to look at both the business case and to get some energy answers. And at the top here, these are the results from running the calculator. And when you run these calculators, you're either going to get kilowatt hours per year or therms per year. In this case, we have therms per year. And you can turn around and drop those numbers into the EPA's greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator. And I've given you the URL at the bottom there. And when you do that, you end up with a bunch of CO2 related information, right? Carbon related. So you can get tons of carbon, or you can get trees that you have to plant per year. By the way, these are great if you've got an engineering department, or you got culinary students, you got green campus people. This is a great exercise to have them roll through the kitchen and go do do a survey of your convection ovens and see how many you have, and then run this calculation. Super simple stuff. Anyway, so here's an idea. So this is a couple of the UCSF oven replacements, then also a hotel all the way on the left here. So let's see, I'm going to use the magic pen. Let's just run this guy. So here's my hotel. Whoops, come back. My pen. Okay, maybe I won't use the magic pen. All right. Yep, not going to use it. The pen's not working for me. So anyway, on the left there, we got a hotel, and we have a couple of university situations. Then we have a restaurant where we pulled out a convection oven, put in a combi, and on the far right, we pulled out a rotisserie. And the average energy savings for 58%. So first off, that's huge carbon savings. But then when I drop it into that EPA calculator, you see the tonnage. And I put these numbers in, and I went, wow, we're talking, 6 tons, 11 tons of carbon saved by replacing standard old convection ovens. So, it's a very compelling case, right? And remember that 11 tons, that's 11 tons lighter. That's 11 tons of, where we've reduced our carbon footprint against the environment. So here's a big message. Specifying and purchasing efficient equipment is one of the best things you can do to create a sustainable kitchen, right? You guys are working on the food side, but you cannot forget your equipment side, and everything relates to everything else in the kitchen. This is another big message for today. Transportation, energy, water, food waste, everything around the circle all relates to everything else. And let's take an example. Here's a combination oven. And all the inputs and outputs of the combi oven, you want to try to get the most efficient oven, and you want to think about how that relates to the rest of the kitchen, to the sewer and the water and the maintenance and pre and post food waste. I know Dare is big on food waste these days, right? And we tend to think about it on the simply from how we're handling that, how we're doing composting, but how often do you think about how the equipment actually does that? If you have very precise pieces of equipment, like combination ovens, you tend to have food waste because your recipes run better. So there's a lot of benefit in stepping back and look at the big picture. Now, that's the sort of equipment side, okay? I know that's a little bit bigger and harder for you guys to do. It takes some specking. I know there's some bureaucracy. Let's talk about the do now, the things that I want you to go back and do today. First thing, roll through those kitchens and fix all your leaks. Hot water leaks in particular, because now we're talking water, sewer, and the energy to heat the water. Maintain your refrigeration. Get your crews in there and clean your coils. A lot of campuses are very good at this, but I've been in other campuses where I found dirty refrigeration coils, and a dirty refrigeration coil, and you got coils everywhere, right? You got them on reach-ins and walk-ins and beverage machines and yogurt machines. Dirty refrigeration coils can double your cost to operate. And double your energy use, that's doubling your carbon. And then the final thing is create a startup and shutdown schedule and really control that. Make sure that appliances are not on, because these are all big energy guzzlers. It's like having a dump truck sitting there. Don't turn it on and idle it when you don't need it. And most appliances are ready to go. Once you turn the on switch on, they're ready to go in about 15 minutes. Unless it's a really big pizza oven, everything's preheated in about 15 minutes, okay? So startup and shutdown, 3 no-cost things you can do today that will cut your carbon. By the way, on the leaks, I just want to mention that March 19th to March 25th is Fix a Leak Week. So everything is really timely, okay? So if somebody gives you some guff, say, get out there and fix a damn leak, because it's Fix a Week leak. And also, I want to hip you to a couple of tools here. We have some little drip gauges. If you email Kiana Caban at frontierenergy.com, okay, get your pen, write that down, take a screenshot. We will send you some drip gauges. You hold it under the leak for 5 seconds. You can read off the side of the drip gauge the gallons per day. You drop that into our free calculator on fishnick.com, and it'll tell you how many gallons per year and what that's costing you. You put in your energy cost and your water cost, and you get a lot of data out of it. Once again, great exercise for your kitchen facilities people, for your engineering students, your culinary students. There's a lot of environmental learning in here that will then help you out when it comes down to the trying to institute a sustainable menu. Okay, so here's the challenge that we have. It's institutional amnesia. We keep coming back and working with food service directors and institutions, and then somebody moves on, or somebody decides sustainability is no good. We need to build in some knowledge base. We need to cultivate and retain some food service energy experts, which is one reason I'm saying go grab your engineering students, go grab your design students, your architects. Let's get them hip to the fact that commercial food service is a big energy hog. It is by far the most energy intensive use on your campus. Okay, your kitchen can be 30 or 40 times more energy intensive than all of your classrooms. So it really is a place to study. And what we're trying to do is get these professionals so we can turn best practice, like fixing a leak is now considered, oh, that's a best practice. It's like flossing. No, it should be standard practice. Nobody should ever walk past a leaky sink. Now, Sophie mentioned that we do have an educational program. We call it Food Service Energy Efficiency Expert. It's meant to spread this training that I'm giving you today. It's meant to spread this to people all over the world, because I can't be everywhere. And once again, you can contact me if you're interested in this. And I do a lot of the narration in the modules. There's 6 modules that cover the 6 different primary areas. And so you see my little guy on the right side there. I get to walk you through this, and we're pretty proud of it. If you're in Northern California, contact me because we have funding for gas savings projects. We have funding for site energy surveys. I know we have universities in Northern California. We can host your training and train your staff at our facility in San Ramon. We have a try before you buy. If your chefs are interested in trying out combination ovens, come over and work with us. We have custom rebate assistance. Email me, okay? Let's, if you're in California, Northern California, come talk to me and let's see what we can do for you from the utility side. Here's the final big thing, okay, the big win. You save energy, cut carbon, and you lighten up on the environment. Okay, so that's, and then you end up with a healthy environment which supports the incredible food that I ate when I went to the Menus of Change conference. And let me tell you, I think that was the best food at any conference ever. So with that, I'm going to flip it back over to Sophie. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to answering some questions for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was perfect setting of the table, or I should say beyond the table. And I'm especially excited for everyone to take advantage of Fix a Leak Week. Perfect timing. With that, I'll just turn it over to Paul to really walk us through what this looks like from the standpoint of a dining director and really trying to act on some of this guidance and turn best practices into standard practices, as you mentioned. Paul, over to you.
About the University of Colorado Boulder. We have about 28,000 undergraduate students here, about 5,000 graduate students. The first year, students are required to have a meal plan and live on campus. And our new building, the Village Center, there are roughly 1,800 first-year students that live in that general area, with 700 more planned to move in starting in the fall of 2019. So CDS is actually made up of residential dining, retail, and catering. We do about 15,000 meals per day and about 3 million meals per year. We have about 316 full-time employees and about 600 student workers. So the Village Center that I'll be talking about today came online in January of 2018. And it was a brand new building. There was a building there before that was built in the late 60s. It's quite an improvement from what the old one was. The joke of the old one was that the food was cooked in the elevator because the kitchen was 3 floors down from the servery. So we decided to go away from that for this building. This building itself, it houses a multi-purpose room with several breakout rooms. It has an academic success and achievement program center in here for tutoring. There's an entrepreneurial space that just opened about 2 months ago called The Spark. That's just a space where students can go and just have a place to kind of innovate and think about businesses that they want to create, ideas they have, just a really nice shared space. And one of the nice things is that we had some old remnant furniture and an old warehouse, and we brought the students down there to show them what they could have, and now all that remnant furniture has a second life, which is great to see and kind of weird because I can still envision it in some of the dining halls that we had it in. So that's a great service. There's also a Wurdenberg Health Services, so just a health service place because this building is technically not on main campus. It's just a little off-site. There's also we also have a retail market. And we have a retail restaurant called The Grotto, which also serves as our late night safe space for our students. And that facility is open from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. 7 days a week for our students. We also have a grab and go in there. And coming in the fall of 2018, we have a UPS store which takes care of all of our mail. So currently, the Village Center Dining Community Commons is on track to be at least LEED Gold, and we are tracking for Platinum, but we don't have the certification yet. So we're excited to finally get our certification to see if we actually do receive Platinum or not. We are in the process also of being Green Restaurant certified, and we're hoping for 3 stars in this building as well. Some of the features in this building that we built into it were low flow water fixtures. All of our equipment in the back of the house, in the front of the house, and cooking equipment is Energy Star rated or better. And that was big for us, and especially in achieving our LEED's goals. We did a lot of daylight harvesting. So in this building, I tried the best I could with the pictures to give you an oversight of what the building looks like inside. We don't need to use a lot of light during the day. We used a lot of skylights to harvest the daylight, and windows as well, so that we wouldn't have to use as little lights as possible between the hours of 9 and 6 p.m., 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So in all those lights that we did use, there are also LED lighting. In the building, we really also put in place motion and occupancy sensors to make sure that if someone's not using a space, that we didn't use extra electricity in order to power that space. And then on the roof, we actually have photovoltaic panels, solar panels that generate up to 140 kilowatts that generate that. So it doesn't necessarily, we sell that energy back to our energy company, which offsets our costs for energy that we produce in this building. Let's see. So one of the things that we have in this building is we actually have a biodigester. So when we built this building, all of our other dining halls had a pulper that would go down, and we take out, and we were able to sell that to a local company to make compost. And we wanted to think of something that we could do differently in this building. So we went towards the idea of the biodigester. So the basic idea of the biodigester is that it basically liquefies food waste and returns it to the wastewater treatment center in the gray water. And it actually provides the city of Boulder with some necessary enzymes and bacteria to help break down all the other water and wastewater at their facility. So the whole process of the biodigester takes about 72 hours from the time that something goes into the biodigester. It has 3 different chambers that breaks everything down, and it is a continuous feed as well. So we don't have to stop it and start it again. And to our knowledge, we have the largest and only 3 compartment continuous feed one in the country, which can be good and bad. One of the other things that we looked at in building this building was that we also don't have any deep fat fryers at all in this building. And we're not the first in the country to do that, but we're the first on our campus. And surprisingly enough, like, everyone thought there was going to be a revolt. The kids weren't going to get their chicken nuggets or their French fries or anything like that. But with using combi ovens and the different programs that those have, we still serve fries, we still serve tater tots. There hasn't been a revolt yet, which is great. One of the only drawbacks about that we didn't foresee, and just being transparent, was that we didn't actually plan for a grease disposal because we didn't have deep fat fryers. However, there's still grease that does populate in the kitchen. So now we actually don't get very much. Our biggest one for grease is basically bacon fat when we do breakfast. So we just ship that off to another one of our buildings, and we have to the grease containment center there. So in this picture right here that you see is our electrochromic windows. So if you can see everything on the left side of the screen, those windows look like regular windows. You can see through them. They're not tinted at all. And the ones on the right side of the screen, they look a little darker. So these windows themselves are kind of like transition lenses for people who wear glasses. Basically, all the windows actually have a sensor in them. So it'll actually adjust the tint of the window depending on how strong the sun's rays are. This was really important to us because when we were developing and designing this new building, we wanted to make sure that we preserved the wonderful views of the Flatirons, but we also didn't want to cover them up. And the sun being on the south side and west side of the building definitely makes it kind of intense if you're sitting there in the middle of the day eating. You don't want to be there because you feel like you're going to melt. So if we put in any kind of shade or anything like that, it would block the views. So these windows really met our criteria of keeping the views and also keeping our customers happy in their dining experience. The chairs that you see in this picture as well are actually made from 111. Each chair is made from 111 20-ounce recycled soda bottles. So in this dining hall, all these chairs make up about 28% of our total seating in this dining hall. So next we have our toast, is what we call our all-day breakfast option for our students. But part of that, we really wanted to bring in, everyone loves bacon and eggs, but we also wanted to bring in juices and smoothies as part of the breakfast option as well. So every single day we do a different juice for the students, whether or not it be a beet and carrot and ginger, juiced fresh. And we also have the availability of smoothies, and you can see this student having a great time on a bike, blending her own smoothie. So students have the availability to actually blend their own smoothie. If they so choose, if they don't want to pedal the bike, we still have blenders there so they don't have to partake. So it's actually quite popular with our students. The juices are great all day long. The juices are served all day long as well. Next we have, so one of the things that we wanted to look at in looking at the design in healthy and sustainable is that we didn't have a good picture, so you can't see it, but there's a main staircase that comes up the stairs. And the first thing you see is actually our soup and salad and deli bar, really bringing you in to that fresh sense of the food being served. In the back, you'll also see some windows with some towers that actually peeks into our 3,000 square foot greenhouse. So we wanted to make the connection right there, that the food that the students are receiving is being grown right there, at least some of it, and it's going right on the salad bars. And the last thing is our greenhouse. So there's not a lot of green in there because we actually just received okay from EH&S to start up our greenhouse, but it is a 3,000 square foot greenhouse that houses 136 8-foot aeroponic towers. Our hope is that we will, depending on yields and all the other factors, that we'll be able to grow enough green leafy vegetables for all of our residential dining services across campus. That's kind of what we're focusing on right now. We are looking at what other options we can grow, whether or not we can supply some restaurants within the village center with some produce that we might not be able to get off season. It's still very much a work in progress, but we're excited to have it up and running, and the pods are now in there and we're growing away. So we also, part of this building in healthy and sustainable was that we built a teaching kitchen and a demonstration kitchen. So the picture on the left is our demonstration kitchen that chefs can go in there and actually teach a class and show different techniques with students actually can sit around that area and be served the food that they're making. There's also an option that they can record the training that they're doing right there. And on the side wall, there's also another screen that can be projected into the dining room so that everyone can see what's going on. So here we've done different cooking classes and demonstrations on how to cook on your own when you go out into the world after you don't live on campus for the first year. And then the one on the right is our teaching kitchen. So this is where we really the students can have a hands-on experience in learning hands-on skills. So this area right here isn't separated from the dining hall. It's right in the dining hall. We wanted that experience to be just transparent and fluid, that anyone can come and join in when we had a program or not. Inside, the tables themselves are actually made, are sustainably harvested, made out of beetle kill pine. And in the center, we put induction burners on there so the space is still usable during the day until we have a function. So we can use it as for seating, and then we can also use it for events. So we do different cooking classes here. We're doing an event series right now called the Blue Zone, which focuses on the areas of the world that people live over 100, really showcasing, that kind of cuisine and what, how they're eating there, and also showing the students how they can do it and how easy it is for them as well. So that is what I have for my part of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Paul. That's fantastic. And the photos really don't quite do it justice, but give a great sense of the different techniques. And what I love about CU Boulder is, Paul, your program is, you're such leaders clearly in sustainability and have been recognized for that, and continually striving for higher and higher lead status and so on. But I love that your program also really kept the health component of the principle, or really illustrates the health component through things like the teaching kitchen and demo kitchen. So the space really reflects the interconnectedness of health and sustainability as far as operations and dining spaces are concerned. So love that example. Or that the range of examples that you shared. So we want to open it up. We've got about 20 minutes remaining, and this is the portion where we love for you all to ask questions of Richard and Paul that relate to your own operations, your own students, if you are not in on the dining services side. If there are questions maybe from a more of an academic standpoint, now is your chance. You can use the chat function. Hopefully you all can see that. We'll give you just a second. Otherwise, I'll chime in as I often do. First question.
Or you can unmute yourself too. You see that, hopefully in the right. Maybe, should I? This is Dara. So maybe while you're unmuting, I might, maybe less of a question, but just a shout out. So, Richard is local for me, and we've worked with them a lot. They've done audits of our dining halls before I came, and they've done some with me, and we've actually been doing some research together too. And I've gone for some of their trainings in person, and it's really neat to go see. I sort of explain them as like the consumer reports of kitchen equipment. And but one of the things that I sort of reach out to Richard every once in a while, because he really is the main expert in all of this, like what can I be doing? And I found they have some short videos, and I will send these out. There's a 2-minute video about these ECM motors that go in fridges, which I think my understanding is now it's the law of like when you put it in, it's standard. But if you have old fridges, there's, your fridge motor is, the fan is running all of the time, and these reduce it by like 66 or 75% the energy use. And because they're on 24/7, it actually adds up a lot. And I don't want to pull up my numbers now, but basically they helped me out. We found a company. I was able to get rebates actually from the university to fully pay for it. And I did like 72 motors, and it really is like a huge save, 75%, and there's no, impact on the fridges at all. So if you have old refrigerators, I'm sort of an evangelist for this, and it's like full credit to Fishnick for, having this short video. That was awesome. So, go look at that, but really, really go look at Richard's website, because I think there's just so much out there we can be doing in older, even not renovating, just changing equipment. Oh, we also did.
You were awesome. Thank
sprayers.
you.
That's how we first met. We did clearance sprayers, right, Richard? Which was great. And you guys give some awards out too, I think, at the NRA conference. And so I used the one you gave an award to a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. It probably was the Kitchen Innovations Award. It's not us, but we support that, the Kitchen Innovations, right? Yeah, the ECM motors, that's an easy one to do. It's a low cost. I think the biggest challenge is just getting, university staff to go for it. But it's very low cost, very low risk. It is the law across the country that all new boxes have to have ECM motors. I was just at a facility managers conference, and what they told me is that some of the boxes that came shipped with ECM motors as part of the federal law, well, those motors are now starting to time out. They eventually burn up, and people are going back to the old motors because they didn't realize what the energy savings were. So that's another thing. Just make sure that your campus facilities folks know that your walk-in boxes need those ECM motors. I had a question for Paul. Paul, I wanted to know, first off, if it's possible, I wanted to ask you who did the food service consulting for your project, and then also wanted to ask you how easy was it, or how complicated and difficult was it for you to get all of your Energy Star appliances spec'd out and then to hold spec? Because one of the things we see with university is that we'll talk to people such as yourself, and you'll agree and say, yeah, this efficient equipment looks really great, and you throw it into the plans, and then along comes the value engineering person, and your efficient equipment goes away. So I'd love for you to tell us a story about how you kept your equipment, and also, if at all possible, who your consultant was.
Sure. So we use the Baker Group for our food service consultant on this building, and we had used them before on several other buildings on campus that we recently built as well. And as far as, is not value engineering out the Energy Star equipment was basically put on the table from the get-go.
Okay.
Knowing how hard it was and is to achieve LEED's gold, we need to keep that on the table and really make sure that we were looking at other options and areas first, and that the equipment wasn't immediately value engineered out. So that's kind of how we went about it. We really held firm, if we can save money, what else can we do that won't have as much of an impact? What do our tables look like, our chairs, our soft seating? What else can we do to keep the equipment that we know we need in order to meet LEEDs in the building? So, and Baker, knowing we felt that way in several other jobs, they really didn't come to us and ask us and really present that, because they know it would be a no.
Oh, that's excellent. Yes, and it is. It's very difficult sometimes. And one of the beauties of certifying your project LEED is that it does help you to put your foot down and stick to it. Hey, Paul, I don't know if you have the chat on, but I noticed somebody was asking you about payback on the electrochromic windows and also on the PV panels on the roof. And I think I can probably answer the PV question. People tend to put the payback on that at, between 10 and 20 years, depending on how you work it out. And I don't know if the university, sometimes people just lease out the space, so the payback's really quick. But how about the electrochromic windows? Did anybody do a analysis on those? Because they do save energy, because they do reduce the heat gain to the space.
Sure. I'm not aware of what they were looking for and what the payback on the windows were. I know that was part of it, is really looking at, when we were designing the building, it was really looking at how the building was actually going to be built in order to harvest as much of the natural sunlight that we have here in Colorado. So I don't have that answer, but I can definitely find it out and email that person back.
Yeah, and in some cases you do it because it's just aesthetically so pleasing. With a view like the one you have, why wouldn't you? And the other option, is that you put in these automated blinds that go up and down and block the heat gain. But then you've got another system. You've got you've got blinds that you have to clean and all this kind of stuff. And so the electrochromic windows are beautiful and elegant, and that's one that even if it had a 30-year payback, you would do it because it's so gorgeous. It's not sometimes you can't put a simple dollar ROI on an architectural element like that.
Oh, very much so. That was a big thing for us, because at our previous facility we had blinds, and they were just a pain.
Yes.
And it really took away from the aesthetics of what was there, the natural beauty of the mountains. So I'm sure there was some, because those windows are a little more pricey than normal windows. So I'm sure there was a calculation done to see what kind of savings we received from these windows as well.
Yeah. Somebody asked me, University of Connecticut, asking me about the benefits from switching from electric to gas. And this really varies. It really comes down to what your electricity prices look like, what your gas prices look like. I can give you a rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb is that most kitchens Most of the large cooking equipment in most kitchens tends to be natural gas, because the cost of natural gas as a fuel tends to be lower than the cost of electricity. So that's a rule of thumb. But you may be in a place in the Pacific Northwest, some spot like that, and I'm not sure what the prices look like at the University of Connecticut, or you may have your own cogeneration plant or something along those lines. But if you have very low electricity cost, you may want to go with electric appliances. Electric appliances tend to be more efficient than natural gas appliances, but because natural gas is a lower cost fuel, most people go for the gas appliances. And in the end, you'd like to do an analysis and choose what's best. Now, Paul's kitchen also has photovoltaics up on the roof. And if you were making enough power to power your entire kitchen, then of course electric equipment makes sense, because now you've become your own energy company and you have electricity that you're generating, and why not power your own appliances with the electricity from your roof? With it at 140 kW of photovoltaics, I have a feeling that's not enough power, not enough solar power to power the entire kitchen. So in Paul's case, you're generating a lot of your electricity, but probably not enough to run the whole building. So you probably have a mix of electric and gas appliances.
That is correct.
Yeah, but it really does depend. So that's one of those things, that's what us engineering nerds live for. We love to do the analysis. And that's another, you can use those life cycle cost calculators I showed you at fishnick.com to do some of that pricing and see. Or you can call us up and we can help you out with that. Other questions? What other questions do we have out there, you guys? I know you're curious. We have a couple more minutes here.
I have one. This is Dara.
Yeah.
We have a couple over here, but Paul, can you tell us more about those tables? I think you call them beetle kill, which I have an assumption, but I don't really know what it is, and where you got them too. Sounds pretty neat.
Sure. So the tables themselves are actually, a couple of years ago, we had a really bad infestation of pine beetles that were killing a lot of pine trees in our area. And basically what they were doing is basically eating and killing the cardiovascular system of the actual trees. So the wood itself, people weren't actually using, because after beetle kill, the inside of the wood actually turned a little bit blue. So people using pine wanted that white pine, and it wasn't being used very often. Now it's actually being sustainably harvested, because the trees themselves are dead. So if we actually need to take down the trees, or else they become wonderful tinder for fire season. So harvesting those trees as they're already dead, and it actually has this wonderful blue hue. When you stain it, it really comes out. So those tables themselves actually came from about 2.5 to 3 hours away here in Colorado, and we had a local artist who actually built those tables to our specs for not only our teaching kitchen, but also we have 3 other tables at the other end of the dining hall that students can use as a communal table. So it was really great that the artist actually filled in the spots in the pine with some resin to match the actual blue tint. So it's all filled in, and they were sustainably harvested. They're beautiful tables. And we were worried originally that the students might carve into them, just because, but they haven't, because I think everybody wants one, but they're so heavy nobody can walk out with it. So we're good with that.
That's really interesting. Wow, thank you. So we have another question. I don't know if people saw that. Richard had said someone fired up a leaf blower outside his window, so he's on mute. But Joe asked a question for Paul. It says, when you're slower over the summer, do you get energy credits back from your electric company for your PV panels?
Yeah, we don't actually, like I said, we don't actually use any of the electricity on our panels on our roof. We sell 100% of that back to our XL company, our energy company. So yes.
That's great. So are there any more questions? You want to write them in, or you guys can unmute yourselves too. If not, Sophie, I think might.
And I'm better now. The leaf blower moved along.
Perfect. So I had a question for you. So I love some of the really cut to the chase kind of guidance that you give, Richard. You mentioned leaks, obviously, and ovens. And I think one of the things that is always on everyone's minds, of course, is the business case, right? And the cost, and that came up a little bit in the chat so far. So I'd love to know sort of like, is there, this kind of goes two ways. Is there sort of a most common mistake that's really a low-hanging fruit example from a cost-saving standpoint that you see across institutions?
Oh yeah, I would say probably the lowest hanging fruit out there is the pre-rinse spray valves in your dish rooms. Universities tend to have pretty sizable dish rooms with some pretty big dish machine equipment and a staff that's cleaning a lot of plates. The low flow pre-rinse valves, and once again, you go to fishnick.com and look under Save Water, and you'll get the whole story and a list of the valves that we have tested. Those are basically those high pressure nozzles that the dishwasher is spraying on the plates to knock the food off before they put them into the dish machine. And the classic versions of those nozzles ran at 4.5 to 6 gallons a minute. The national law, which we helped get right many years ago, means you're supposed to have a spray valve at 1.6 gallons per minute. Typically, we're promoting ones that work at 1.2 gallons per minute. So you're talking massive water savings, and it's hot water savings, so it really adds up in a hurry. But we still go into kitchens all the time, and we see a couple of things. We see kitchens that do not have the low flow valves, and so that's step one, put the valve in. The other thing we see is low flow valves that have worn out. Eventually, run that much water through them, eventually they're going to clog up with minerals or wear out. And so instead of replacing the valve, somebody will call facility maintenance guys, and they come in with a drill and they just drill the hole out. So your 1.2 gallon per minute valve just went up to 5 gallons per minute, and all your water and energy savings went down the drain. So it's a $50 part. When it wears out, clogs up, starts acting weird, you recycle it and grab another one. And then the other thing that we see is you'll go into a scullery, and you'll have a low flow valve hanging there, but the staff is pull the hose across the room, and they're washing dishes with a garden hose with a spray valve on it, or with nothing at all. And sometimes they'll just turn the hose on and sit it there in the dish trough and just let it run. And now we're talking 20 to 40 gallons per minute. So that's just the easiest thing. And training for people in the dish room too. You put the low flow valves on, and then you want to train people to use them so that they use them properly. And yeah, you want to try and avoid dragging a garden hose over to but let me tell you, we've seen this many, many times. And finally, the other thing is just to maintain dish machines. We've been doing a lot of field studies on dish machines, and we're about to put out a big report on this. Same thing, you'll be able to find it on fishnick.com. And it will be talking about all kinds of dish machines and hot water systems from restaurants all the way up to big institutions. We have some schools in there. We actually did some work with Stanford, so Dara knows about our dish machine work. And the savings in dish rooms and on dish machines is substantial, and a lot of it is just maintenance. These machines get out of whack. They first off, they get installed, and they get installed at much higher water ratings than what the spec says. Then they wear out, they get broken, solenoids break, valves break, all this kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, you're running 10,000 gallons a day of water down the drain and not doing any useful work. So your dish room is a great place to start if you really want to get some major savings.
That's great. Thank you, Richard. I was going to add in, just when we did the pre-rinse spray nozzles with you, the other place was the outside. We have garden hoses, like the can washing, and the same company I bought them from, and I can send this to people. They had a much lower, spray nozzle for those outside hoses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it was also like $50 each. Really cheap. And then for us, we were in a drought, and I got rebates for all of it too. So
yes, and everybody look for those rebates. I know that they can be a pain in some places. We try to make the California ones as easy as possible. But that's your money, right? This is money from the utilities back to the campus, and try to get the rebate. And when you do, go to your management and say, hey, I just got $1,000 rebate. Instead of, taking that and throwing it into some general fund, let me put that $1,000 aside for some LED lighting or for some, additional maintenance or for ECM motors. ECM motor runs you about $150, something like that. Hey, let me buy some ECM motors. So try to take those rebate dollars, and get additional energy savings out of it.
That's great. And this is Sophie again. Love that example, Richard. That was exactly where I was hoping you would go with that question. And I just think it's such a simple, elegant example that speaks volumes, really. And as you said, you don't want water. It's, money down the drain, quite literally.
That's right.
With just a couple minutes remaining, I wanted to very quickly ask Paul to speak to this really important point about making the business case, advocating for change internally on your campus. Paul, I'd love to hear you just briefly share sort of a word to the wise on what has worked with telling the story of some of these practices. I mean, any of us here can see with photos the beautiful examples that you've shared, but whether it's infographics or translating it into cost savings right off the bat, or if it's the ability to recruit students, all of those kinds of things may be at someone's storytelling disposal, but I'd love to hear you briefly speak to that in our final minute.
Sure. University dining used to be considered an afterthought, and there used to be so many silos on the universities, and I think that with the many to change University Research Collaborative and breaking down those silos, it's really become all across campus. So for us, dining is now used as a recruiting tool for our recruiters who go across the country and across the world, as the food is now actually a part of their whole experience. So for us in student affairs, it's really about a holistic experience for our students now. It's not just 100% academic. It's really the holistic. If they're getting good food in the morning, they're going to be able to study better during the day. And then one thing that you didn't see on this in these slides is that our dining rooms, when we close down, actually we partition them off, and the dining rooms are actually used at night for study spaces. So we're not only utilizing the space during the day, during the meal times, but now after hours, the students have a space that's safe to actually go and study as well. So for us, it's really been advocating the whole holistic view of a student and the experience of a student to, cooking classes. Coming to college is more about just learning what's in books. It's about how to take care of themselves after they leave. And I think that a lot of upper administration is starting to see that, and especially with a lot of schools going and touting the digital experience and the digital learning platform, is that what can the on-campus experience, how can that be enhanced, and why it's so important to still continue to have on-campus experiences that are holistic. So that's kind of where we are, and it's great that the chancellor all the way down now is starting to see it as all one part of the whole student experience.
That's great, Paul, and that really I think just is kind of a perfect way to end this, where it's cost savings, it's the right thing to do from the standpoint of creating a really exciting food experience in beautiful spaces, preserving your views from a health and sustainability standpoint, but it goes far beyond that to the competitive edge and the overall value proposition of the on-campus experience, as you beautifully articulated. So we'll leave it there for now. Thank you to our fantastic speakers, Paul and Richard. Dara will be sending all of the follow-up materials after this, but really thank you for taking the time, and thank you to all the fabulous members and sponsor representatives who took the time to join us today. We're delighted and hope you find this valuable and able to implement some of these inspiring ideas on your own campuses. Have a fabulous afternoon, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Nicely done.